I am very excited to introduce Maria Greenshields-Ziman. Maria is a multidisciplinary artist who works with the natural world, exploring how it is both strong and enduring, yet fragile and vulnerable to human intervention. Working across media such as drawing, painting, and sculpture, she builds layered images of trees and forests in cycles of growth and decay. She grew up in the English countryside among ponds, fields, and trees, landscapes that still shape her work today. She calls her work process driven and strictly non-purist, and each piece is, in her own words, both a journey and an exploration. I would like to welcome Maria Greenshields-Ziman.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for
Nice to
coming.
meet you.
It's nice to meet you as well. Um, so kind of touching on that last point I just talked about, you've said each piece is a journey and an exploration. Where
hmm
does that journey typically begin for you for any given piece?
I think it probably begins in just a piece of fauna, whether it's actually multiple pieces or whether it's just one particular, sorry, I'll just take this off, one particular shape that I'm drawn to within a plant or a silhouette. And quite often I'll start off by actually spraying around that plant. And then it kind of takes me, as I say, it takes me on the journey from there. So when I take the plant away from the material that I've sprayed it on, um, and I see the silhouette, the mark that it's left, that's usually the jumping off point for me. And that's the point where I'll think, oh, I need more of this, I need more of that, I need more texture, I need more color. And then I'll start forming the composition.
Nice. Okay. And then I guess continuing to touch on like the influences of your art. You live in
hmm
both the rural English countryside and the urban sprawl of Los Angeles.
hmm
How do these two starkly different environments influence your work when you sit down to create?
Good question. I think a lot of my inspiration obviously comes from where I grew up. You can see where I grew up out the window right now. It's the
Cool.
English countryside, incredibly green,
Yeah.
just beautiful old deciduous trees. Um, and I think I kind of brought that with me to LA, and it became almost a sense of homesickness, a way of dealing with homesickness. It was a nostalgia for that kind of a beautiful rural involvement that I have. And so I kind of carried on with that concept of landscape and trees and flora and almost kind of it was a way of remembering. But then as I lived in Los Angeles, I've now lived there for over 40 years. I have a new appreciation of the environment around me. I still I'm always looking at the incredible the the light that Los Angeles, has that incredible light that Los Angeles has, and how trees look as they, as the light passes through, in urban areas, even in the grasses on the side of the road in Los Angeles, and how at sunset, they kind of light up, and they have this kind of ethereal quality. So that's kind of become an inspiration. And the beauty of California trees. Oak trees, all the different beautiful Monterey cypresses and the shapes and the forms. The one tree that I haven't really formed a relationship with yet because I don't think of them as trees are palm trees. Because to me they just look like a pole with a top knot on them. I mean, it's just, I mean, I
Fair.
know that they're also, I mean, they harbor a great ecosystem as well within their leaves and everything, but it just doesn't do it for me. It doesn't, they don't sing to me, put it that way. So there's, there are various things, and cacti also. I mean, so many people are drawn to cacti, and it's just so foreign to me that it's not something that I've been particularly interested in portraying, because it's just so different to what I grew up with, I think.
Yeah, and I guess with that newfound interest and like admiration of were saying the like little things like the grass on the side of the road
Mhm.
in Los Angeles and these trees, like how has that manifested itself in your works or like series?
I think the specifically the light has actually inspired light boxes. Just in a very literal way. I just wanted to almost create that three-dimensional effect that putting light behind something and lighting it up, it almost feels like you're drawn into that space. And it was a kind of a mixture of that and also, seeing when I was a kid, we used to have, we didn't used to have iPhones, obviously. My dad used to take these beautiful photos, and he used to show them on a screen with the diapositive, transparencies. And the minute it went through a projector and lit up the screen, and our whole family was sitting there, for for film show night, and it was that kind of, again, it's like a kind of a memory of something being projected or light actually making something come alive. And I think I'm sort of trying to revisit that when I make the light boxes.
Um, a lot of your subjects are natural processes like growth, decay, and damage, but
Hmm.
next work is a highly composed piece that hangs in like a curated space. So where do you feel the line falls between your hand and the natural processes you're depicting?
Yeah, I very intentionally compose the pieces. I'm very aware of composition. I'm very aware of balance and texture and color. And I don't know if that was what I learned at, art college. I don't think it is because I really learned nothing at art college, apart from how to play pool quite well. But um, yeah, I think I just observe a lot of drawing and painting, and when I see a painting that I really, really love, I try and dissect it, thinking, why is that giving me such a great deal of pleasure? And it's usually because of the composition and because there's a balance. Um, and I think I try to recreate that. And I think when something's off. I think when an artist has intentionally created a sense of anxiety. Um, that's not what I do. I can appreciate when artists do that, and that's usually done through a composition. That there's just like the balance is off, there's something wrong, there's something not quite right. And I'm very aware of trying not to do that.
I guess with that, is the composition like when you make said compositions, like is it
Mhm.
more influence on your own intuition of like the what you were just talking about of it feels not right, or is
Mhm.
it so influenced by like things you've seen in nature and you try to like mimic that in your work?
I think it's a little bit of both. Um, I think, there is. I mean, if you take, a single tree, for instance, I mean, it does have, I mean, it's beautifully, imperfectly formed. And that is something that I will try and mimic, or even the shape of a leaf. It's again beautifully, imperfectly formed. And each leaf is, different to the next leaf. And I think, yeah, I think what was the question again? Sorry.
It's like when you're making your compositions that like
Like
are
how
you
much is it intentional and how
yeah,
much
like
is
how
it?
much of it
Yeah,
is like intentional and how much of it is you wanting to base it off of like the like perfectly imperfect
right,
of nature.
right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, it's always a little bit of both. I mean, sometimes I work from photographs. Sometimes I work from actual, plants that are in front of me, and I use those as, as my subjects and as reference. Um, sometimes, I mean, in the last, I don't know, a year or so, I could probably count on one hand the amount of pieces that I've actually done from a photograph, and the rest of it's been more kind of intuition. But then I will always refer back to the the piece that I'm doing. Like if I've thrown some grasses into a composition, sprayed around them, I've got the shape of them. But then I need to go back in and really observe how each grass is composed. And so I'll, take a piece of grass and draw it and really just have pay close attention to how things are formed.
Nice. And then I guess like you've kind of touched on this a little bit in the first question, but your process is experimental and non-purist, and you combine
Hmm.
organic specimens with industrial materials like spray paint and sometimes
Hmm.
metal. Um, I guess how do you work within like combining these two vastly different like material like spheres of materials and like to create these compositions that you're talking about?
I think I just really grab the medium that's gonna work for the idea that I have. So it's not really intentionally saying, "Oh, I need to use something that's like that's contemporary and industrial," and I I don't necessarily want that feel. It's just that that's the immediate effect that I need. So I'll grab some spray paint because that's going to work for the piece that I'm doing. Or I'll grab some charcoal because I needed a darker line and I needed that to be more distinct. So it is always a mixture of, you know, it's sometimes I use watercolor, sometimes I use like crayon or pencil. And it really just, it's because the piece dictates it, because the piece needs it. Um, but I mean, I very, very rarely start out knowing what I'm doing. Really. um, I usually find the way as I'm doing it. So that's the process-driven part of it. And I have utmost admiration for people that can draw something out and map it and then even like, grid it out and say, this is exactly what I'm going to do. And this is what I've got in my brain. This is what I want to make. This is how it's going to look in the end. Because I have not a clue. I have not a clue what it's going to end up like. And that's part of the joy for me. Um, it would be I would find it very boring to have to, be, say, a graphic artist and stick to rules, because I prefer not to have rules.
That's fair. And I guess touching on like that very like process driven methods you use like and the composition we've been talking about, like how do you then know a piece is finished? Is it just like that intuition we've been talking about, or is it
Yeah, it's intuition. It's also it's really hard to know when things are finished. I usually call Michelle in and say, "What do you think?" And she's very good at giving me her honest opinion. But I think it's probably when I know that if I do any more to it, that I will mess it up. But again, how do you know that? Maybe it even takes doing more to it and messing it up and then realizing that that's happened and trying to walk it back a little bit and come at it. There's always there's always a time. I mean, there's each piece goes through particular time periods as you're making it. And there's always the exciting part at the beginning when you're playing music and you're like, oh, this is going to be great. And then you work on it a little bit and you think, oh, this is going to be fine. Then you go through a point where you think this is absolute shit. It's like I'm just gonna walk away because it's so bad. And then you come back next day and you see some redeeming quality to it. And you start working on it again. So it is always like adding and taking away, adding and taking away. And then thinking you're going on a certain path and then realizing that that is not particularly the right path. And then doing a U-turn and trying something else. And I mean, I'm always sort of saying that, there are no mistakes, and there really aren't mistakes because you just, a mistake is just knowing what you did wrong and trying to correct it. So that's part of the journey. That's part of the process.
Um, and then you also talk about like the indispensability of forests and humans pushing nature past its limits. I think we're
Hmm.
currently seeing a huge rise in companies exploiting nature in this way. And um, how, if at all, have you seen that like has changed your practice or the meaning of your work and the intentions behind wanting to highlight nature in the way you do?
I mean, I think it's the most important thing that we're doing at the moment is, I mean, this is the worst thing that we're doing at the moment. I mean, we are messing up the world. I mean, we're messing up this beautiful planet. And there's just with I just see all the things that are happening. Everyone's been enjoying this wonderful summer here in the UK, and it's just the environment, the ecosystem just can't cope. It just can't cope. I mean, everyone thinks it's a fantastic summer, but what's happening is that whole species are dying off because the rivers are too warm, and because certain fish can't live, like sea trout can't live. I think it was, I can't remember how many degrees it was, but it's like already 3 degrees above where the sea trout can actually spawn. And if there's no sea trout, then there's other things that rely on the sea trout to live, and it's just, it's one thing after another. It's just this whole chain is just beginning to break down,
Yeah.
and I think what I'm maybe hope that people get from my work is a sort of a renewed appreciation of how beautiful nature can be and what an inspiration it can be, and maybe it's it's worth saving. Just an awareness, really, just an increased awareness of what's happening, and and maybe putting some pressure on the people that are our politicians that are just ruining our planet for us.
And then to cap it off on a lighter note,
Yeah.
with it currently being summer, what is your favorite summer memory of being in nature?
Oof, that's a great one. Um, well, there's so many. There's so many.
There.
I mean, I grew up on a farm, and it's not really. I mean, the whole thing being in nature in the summer on the farm, it's just like everything is just so very, very different to how it is in the cold, rainy months of winter. Everything comes alive. There's a particular tree in our garden, which is a cornice tree, which was just in bloom when I arrived in May, at the end of May, and it was a riot of just this white, beautiful, beautiful flower, massive tree with these, gorgeous flowers. And then the smell of grass, just the smell of not the grass that you smell in Venice, in LA, not that kind of grass, the green grass. Um, Smell of cut grass, I love. There's this thing called silage making in England, which is it's cut grass, and it's sort of you cut it when it's really high, and then you press it down really tightly with molasses, and it gets rolled up into bales that you feed the cows in the winter. And just that's silage making process when you cut the grass with a combine harvester. Um, and it doesn't sound particularly eco-friendly,
Mhm.
but it's just it is a memory, and that's that memory of riding on the tractor on the trailer when the grass is piled high, and we were allowed to sometimes, if my dad was very being in a good mood, allowed to ride on top of the grass on top of the trailer, which was like 30 feet above the ground,
Oh, wow.
just like on this like mound of grass. And it was just the most fantastic thing. And we could like go past the cherry tree and grab cherries as we were kind of driving underneath the trees. And it was just a great memory. Um, yeah, so many memories of growing up in the countryside, looking after the animals, looking after the calves, um, you know, playing with the dogs, training the dogs. It's just endless. Yeah.
All sounds like very
Mhm.
beautiful. Um,
Yeah.
Alrighty, well, thank you so much for taking the time to sit with me and have this discussion.
It was so nice to meet you.